became more and more interested in the directorial aspect of filmmaking. I became aware of the director, and I was reading up on people like John Ford, Ernst Lubitsch, William Wyler, Frank Capra, and looking for their speciality in a film, their sort of special characteristics.
When you look at the early journey of a lot of filmmakers, you'll often find that they were inspired by the little things in their lives. Some started with the love of photography, some started by documenting their everyday lives. Others simply picked up a camera and started experimenting with making videos. Mine was a little bit different. Yep, I was your average Joe that went to the cinema every now and then with his family, and I didn't really think much of it, but I thought movies looked cool. My favorite movie when I was younger was Transformers, Michael Bay's Transformers. For most of my life, I wasn't particularly interested in film. I always saw art as a gateway, but was never really too interested in it. My interest in art was pretty surface level. I was your stereotypical Chinese kid who was never really good with numbers and was on set to becoming an accountant, or at least anything to do with numbers. I took it pretty seriously too. I was even trying so hard to make my way to get an accounting degree and have dreams of completing my ACCAs. Then one day I stopped and think, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? I started breaking down things on what I really wanted to do and what makes me happy. And I came to the conclusion that I wanted to make things with a camera. I spent a lot of time watching YouTube, and I thought it was really cool when people just started picking up the cameras and started editing videos and eventually making things that people would want to watch. I remember telling my mom that I wanted to change my career path and make videos. She was hesitant at first. I mean, come on. I'm your typical Asian kid raised in a typical Asian household, and doing art was never really an option. So I had to prove myself. I took my phone at the time, which was a Samsung Galaxy S7. I don't have it with me right now, but it's pretty much like dead. And I used that to kind of just vlog my daily life. I took it everywhere with me. I had this like small octopus like tripod, I think that's what they call it, like the black and white thing. I used that to kind of just document my life. These were like private videos that I just edit. I'd show like my friends, my family, and yeah, they thought it was pretty cool. That's where I like experimented with a lot of my video making and video editing. Eventually, I wanted a proper camera. I remember bargaining with my mom to get me a camera, and I think she really saw how much I enjoyed making videos. She told me that I could find a camera and I'd pay half for it and she'd pay the other half. So luckily at the time, when I moved to government school, I was given, or like students in Brunei basically given like a $50 travel allowance depending on where you lived, and I lived quite a distance from school. So every month I'd save up for about 8 months of that, and eventually I got my first camera, which is my, which was my 70D. This thing is pretty much dead, but I mean, I wouldn't say dead. It still works. It's my career starter, I would say. I remember, I don't remember how much I paid for this, but yeah, I made a lot of my videos on this. It has some problems. It even has like tape on here, on the screen. That's basically to just help me with like framing and everything. Yeah, I use tape. This thing's pretty busted now. So yeah, this was in 2018. This was the beginning of my filmmaking journey. I remember watching a lot of Peter McKinnon stuff, and a lot of like Casey Neistat stuff, and I thought like, wow, I really wanna do this, you know. And I guess my introduction to video making was vlogs, hence why I started doing a lot of like vlogs previously. Later on, when I finished my sixth form when I was 19, it was time to choose a course in university, and I wanted to do filmmaking. And at the time, I think my parents were still pretty iffy about it. They didn't really see how I could probably make a career out of this, or they thought that this was just a phase to kind of just not hit the books, you know. Later on, I met a stranger online. His name's Shafi Alim. Eventually, we made Simpati. And for those who don't know, Simpati, it's a short film about racism in Brunei. It had a bit of a virality back then. I think right now it's got like 30K views, but I'm not too sure. And from there, my parents kind of saw the potential and how much I really love this craft. So eventually they shipped me off to the UK. That's when I did my filmmaking degree. But at the time, my understanding for filmmaking was still pretty shallow. I didn't really know a lot of techniques, and I thought that whenever it looks cool, then it was pretty much a set go. The filmmaking school really beat me down to realize that that's not all of it. There was so much more. I met a lot of friends who were my circle in uni, and we made films together. We watched a lot of films. I discovered so many other niche filmmakers, even explored on my own. I remember watching Edward Young's films for the first time, and I was so blown away by how he crafted his films. And I looked up to him so much, yeah. So I started taking the craft of filmmaking a little bit more seriously. But yeah, with film school and my group of friends, I started creating. I started experimenting, and most importantly, I started learning. I think to me, absorbing and experimenting are the most important ways of growing yourself to be anything. Regardless of whether you're in the creative or corporate world, you have to be experimental and you have to be willing to take things in, try things out, fail, and keep going. I started even collecting Blu-rays. I don't know if you could see, but yeah, right there, it's like a whole stack. I'm kind of obsessed with it now, but that's also because of my love for cinema. I started collecting Blu-rays because I wanted to keep learning and absorbing. I started even logging my films on Letterboxd to see what other people are up to and just absorb myself into the world of film, like all over the world, even through social media. And I started paying attention to how people tell their stories. So eventually I'd find my own way to tell my own story. Funny thing is, I don't do filmmaking because it's my job. I do it because I'm genuinely hyperfixated in this art form. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I think about films a little bit too much. But I think that obsession is what drives my passion. And I'm not saying that liking Transformers is a bad thing. Hell, I'd love to own a Blu-ray of that one day if I can afford it. I'm not saying that watching more films automatically makes you a better filmmaker, or to pursue your career in filmmaking you'd have to study abroad. No, I totally realize my privilege in that space, and I thank my parents every day for giving me that opportunity. But what I'm saying is that the films I watched as a kid, the YouTube videos I grew up with, the people I met abroad, the countless amount of vlogs I made, the mistakes I especially made, have shaped me in some way or form today. And more importantly, they're still molding me into the filmmaker I want to become. I owe a huge part of that discovery to the friends I made at university. They have really broadened my sense of how I can shape my stories and how I can tell them. Those people became more than university friends. They're family. And yeah, we're all in our separate ways now, and we still call each other every once in a while. And now here I am. I run a film production company in Brunei with the guy who launched my filmmaking career years ago with Simpati. When I look back from where I started, I never would have expected to end up here. I met so many incredible people along the way, and I learned so much than I would have ever thought. I didn't grow up dreaming to becoming a filmmaker. I didn't even know what filmmaking is. I was just some kid who picked up a camera, started recording videos, and edited them. Eventually, I fell in love with the art form, and somehow that was enough to change my life. Thanks.